Today I'm going to show you how to make a sapele bowl. This is a very small bowl, but I really enjoyed making it. I started out by cutting all the wood into the right dimensions. I used my handsaw to do this. I then knocked the edges of the pieces of wood off using a bit of 40 grit sandpaper. I glued the pieces of wood together using Gorilla Glue and clamped them up with 4 F-clamps. I left this to dry for about 24 hours before attaching the faceplate section. Here you can see I'm chopping up a piece of 30mm thick cherry, which would be the part I would screw the faceplate to. I then used my round scraper to rough this piece of square wood out into a round stock. Whilst I'm roughing this out, I'll just let you know that I have an Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest and website, which I'll link below on this video. Sapele turns really well on a lathe and is a really nice wood to work with. If you haven't worked with sapele before, I'd really recommend it. It's one of my favourite woods to work with because it's easy to use and it's also got a really nice colour to it. As you can see, I have my desired shape, so I started sanding with 180 grit and then followed it up with 400 grit. The 400 grit's used so that I get a really nice smooth finish from the wax that I apply. I'm going to be using my homemade wax here, so as you can see I'm just applying it to the bowl, applying a little bit of pressure with the lathe on its highest speed. This wax is made from a mixture of things and I'll put a video out on that very soon. But all you actually need is some candles, and you can use scented candles if you wish. I used scented candles and it gave a beautiful smell to the bowl and a really nice sheen to it as well. I then used a piece of cloth to buff it off and then used another piece of clean cloth afterwards just to remove any excess. I then drilled a 10mm hole into the bowl, which I would use to start roughing out the inside of it. If you don't want to have to rough out the whole of the inside shape, you could use a large forcener bit to remove the majority of the material, and then just start taking out any extra material to get the wall to the right thickness. As you can see, I'm just using my fingers as a rough depth stop here. I don't need to be exact with it. I then used my round scrapers to start roughing out the inside shape. I think I'm going to buy a slightly bigger tool rest, as I found it quite hard using a smaller tool rest at times, because even though I have a lot of room, I can't quite swing the tool to the right angle that I want. One thing I have found that's quite useful with this lathe is I can take the tail stock off to give me a lot of extra room so I can swing the tool round a lot better. I then sanded with 180 grit and followed it up with 400 again, making sure to sand the walls as well of the bowl. I then buffed off the inside and applied some food safe finish to the inside as well. I then added another coat of my homemade wax finish to the outside of the bowl and buffed that off as well. Applying 2 coats is a good idea because it will make for a much more durable finish and it gives it a better sheen as well. Apologies for the shaky camera angle here. It was quite hard to hold the camera and try and buff it at the same time, so I decided to put the camera down and focus on the safety of my hands rather than focus on the camera angle. I then used my handsaw to part this off of the lathe. You could of course properly part this off, but I find it easier just sawing it and then flattening the bottom using a piece of sandpaper attached to a flat piece of wood. I then applied a coat of food safe finish to the bottom of the bowl, which is just a good idea because it protects it, because that's what you're going to be putting on the surface. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, put them down in the comment section.